From AZ Central, this is Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays. My name is Eric. This channel is called Report and Opine. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I'm absolutely begging you.
I'm begging you, please. Come on, please.
Costs you nothing, helps me a lot. But if you want to pay money and help me even more, you can go ahead and buy my book, New York City 2020, Gotham Unglued, on Amazon.com. That link will be in the description. But these people, these establishment hack shills in Arizona are absolutely spiraling. So this lady, whoever put her up to this, comes out nearly 4 years later and says, there were crimes committed in 2020, basically admitting that if you don't bow to our corruption, then we will charge you with a crime. And we see it all over the place. Even the NYPD, who is completely corrupt, isn't corrupt enough, so the feds want to come after them for parking. Notably, Daniel Penny, right? If you want to protect some people in the subway, then we're going to charge you with a crime. Meanwhile, girls are getting slapped. They're finding body parts on the subway train. And you might think, well, we should try and stop this, and somebody should stand up and be a man. But you can't, because if you do that, you will also be charged. But that's a different story in New York, quite clearly. Obviously, we know about that, and nobody goes to bat for anybody in California. But I digress. And now this lady is going to tell you that basically orange man bad.
After the general election on November 3rd, 2020, the defendants and other unindicted co-conspirators raised false claims of widespread voter fraud in Arizona.
Raised false claims of widespread voter fraud. So just saying false claims. So something false just means something that they didn't say, right? It's debunked, right? All that needs to happen for anything to be true is just for them to say it. So these are false claims of widespread. And you notice they have to throw that weasel word widespread in there because there's voter fraud happening all the time. We know about that. So it just wasn't enough. It wasn't, come on, that wasn't enough. We only had a guy sleeping in his car with a bunch of mail-in ballots, weapons, and drugs, but it wasn't enough to sway the recall election of Governor Greaseball, Scumbag, Bang Your Wife Gavin Newsom, because nobody was going to vote for the black faith of white supremacy anyways. But that's a different story.
To pressure elections officials to change the outcome of a transparent, free, and fair democratic election. Those efforts ultimately failed when officials stood firm, followed their statutory duties, and officially certified Arizona's election on November 30th, 2020. The defendant Republican presidential electors, allegedly plotting with additional defendants.
This woman is a card-carrying member of the Awfuls.
The Awfuls. The affluent white female liberals in the Democrat Party.
And I can be certain that if you, I lived in Maricopa County, right? You can drive around the Phoenix metro area for more than an hour and you're not going to see any support for Cartel Katie. You're not going to see any support for Bo Jiden, right? But you're going to see FJB and Carrie Lake for governor and Trump flags and Trump stickers and that weird LGBT parody sticker. Was it Love Guns Trump Boobs or what? I don't know, but it's a parody on the weirdo LGBTQ agenda. But for some reason they want you to believe that most people in Arizona think Katie Hobbs is the best, and we're not going to listen to Carrie Lake because she's an election denier.
Not only is Carrie Lake, has she centered her entire platform around this election denialism, I didn't want to give her a bigger stage to do that. And
this woman is going to bat for the regime as everything else collapses. Fat Alvin Bragg, big fat phony furious Fanny Pack Willis, whatever happened to that? We were following that story every single day for weeks, and now it's just poof, gone. Where is it? What happened? And then you also got Tish James. Oh, he owes us $500 million, billion, trillion dollars, and then he ends up paying her $175 million and somehow that's a win. It's all completely fake. And she comes out, I guess, as so is this the one that's going to work? I'm not sure what the hell is going on here.
Then voted for Mr. Trump and Vice President Pence on December 14th, 2020, falsely claiming to be the duly elected and qualified electors for President and Vice President of the United States from the state of Arizona. These defendants deceived the citizens of Arizona by falsely claiming...
They deceived the citizens of Arizona? kind of like the regime has been trying their hardest to deceive the entirety of America for at least 4 years?
That those votes were contingent only on a legal challenge that would change the outcome of the election. In reality, the defendants intended...
And you can also tell that she doesn't mean any of this. She has no knowledge of the situation. Almost, she's clearly reading off a teleprompter or something, which is fine. But if you actually believed this, you would just tell us straight up. But you're going to read from the teleprompter. I get it. You don't want to miss any important points. But there are no important points. It's all complete nonsense.
That the false votes for Trump and Pence would encourage Vice President Pence to reject the certified Biden-Harris electors' votes, regardless of the result of any legal challenge.
Okay, so she basically said all that to let you know that Orange Man bad and everything else is collapsing. So now I'm here to, I guess, try to regain some semblance of sanity. And here, as we know, the entirety of the establishment, I mean, they're all over the place. They're absolutely spiraling. But now, for whatever reason, they're going ham in Arizona. Arizona Democratic Governor Cartel Katie vetoes bill cracking down on squatters. So for the past, I don't know, since March or April of 2024, squatters has been a big deal. Never really heard about it before. But now you hear a squatter story almost every day from different regions of the country. And Katie Hobbs wants you to know that she is going to veto a bill that's going to crack down on squatters because it was probably pitched, it was probably authored by a Republican. And why would she do that? But first, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs vetoed legislation that garnered bipartisan support and which strengthened property owners' rights, making it easier for them to evict squatters. The bill, SB 1129, would allow for a homeowner to call law enforcement to immediately remove a squatter from their home. Under current law, police officers do not possess the authority to remove someone illegally residing in one's home, leading to a costly legal battle for homeowners experiencing the issue. And that's why they love it so much, is because it's sort of a weird old Robin Hood thing. Like, yeah, they're going to go broke and we're in the house now. But Hobbs vetoed the bill, claiming in a letter that it fails to leverage existing legal mechanisms, respect the due process rights of lawful tenants, and minimize unintended consequences such as for victims of Wait, okay. So you're protecting the squatters because of domestic violence? What is happening? However, sponsor State Senator Wendy Rogers said the bill had exemptions for family members, those who agreed to cohabitate and didn't interfere with landlord. Okay, so she wrote a carve-out into the bill, but they're not going to do it anyways. Although we have trespassing laws, it's often difficult to prove a person is unlawfully occupying a home and can result in a lengthy legal battle, Rogers said. And even in New York, even in New York, they recently rewrote some law or bill because they were having a huge issue with squatters.
What are your reactions to the changes made in state law, and how do you think they will impact New Yorkers moving forward?
Well, we put them into state law because it makes sense. And I thank you for your reporting that put a spotlight on the fact that there are people illegally in other people's homes and creating havoc. And so we needed to make sure that our budget, the laws that we introduced just last week, would address this crisis.
After a series of 7-year-side investigations, a handful of lawmakers pushed for changes to state law, and the governor signed off on those changes this week. They voted to revise the way tenants are defined in the law to exclude people who don't have a homeowner's permission or legal right to be inside a property.
So Arizona is now worse than New York? Well, they're not worse, but they have their own version of Fat Alvin Bragg with this, or they have their own version of Kickback Kathy Hochul, to be honest, with Katie Hobbs, and this is our campaign, this is our strategy, and we're gonna stick with it, and it doesn't matter if I debate Kari Lake anyways, because that's not what the people of Arizona want.
Look, we're 6 days out from the election, and our campaign strategy is our campaign strategy. So we're moving forward. I'm continuing to make my case to the voters of Arizona. Whether or not we debated in this race is not going to decide this election.
Basically saying the machine worked for her, and she knows it. But I digress. the bill's veto comes following Republican-led states such as Florida and Georgia passing legislation cracking down on so-called squatters' rights. And again, I think even New York did this, and it probably wasn't Republican-led. They were just having so many issues. And I can think of at least one reason why Katie Hobbs would do this. During committee hearings, homeowners testified how squatters caused severe damage to their property, leading to high repair costs. State Senator Justine Wadsack shared that when she worked as a realtor, she encountered encountered a squatter at a home that she was showing to a client. It was a terrifying threat to my safety and the safety of my clients, as well to the homeowners. Wadsack said, then I called police and was told there's not much they could do. It's a shame, Governor. Cartel Katie Hobbs has vetoed yet another piece of common sense bipartisan legislation. Yeah, but she is a machine Democrat, and common sense has they are not willing to operate. Because as soon as you do one thing that makes sense, then it's going to call into question all of the other nonsense that you've done. And none of it makes any sense.
This doesn't make any sense.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis slammed Hobbs' veto. The governor of Arizona just vetoed a bill we signed here in Florida. So these squatters could be evicted. What kind of message does that send? You're saying you can squat in someone's house and then basically have to go through 6-month process. Yes, that's absolutely correct. They want nothing more than that, including SB 1129. Hobbs vetoed a total of 10 measures on Tuesday. So far, this legislative session has vetoed 52 bills. Last year, she issued a total of 143 vetoes, surpassing the single-year record of former Governor Janet Napolitano or whatever. So that's exactly what they're doing. And even in Arizona, there's enough common sense to where, look, I don't know all the ins and outs, but there's enough common sense, I guess, Republicans who are going to pitch things that work for the people of Arizona largely, and they weaseled this woman in to make sure none of that goes through. But with this squatting epidemic and her vetoing this bill, of course she would do that, because she also vetoed a GOP-backed Arizona Border Invasion Act. That was the first bill she vetoed in 2024. So when Bo Biden drafted up a bill, or whatever his handlers drafted up a bill that was going to give money to Ukraine and Israel and Palestine and all of this stuff in exchange for a couple of pennies at the border, and the Republicans didn't want to sign it, that of course was their fault. And Trump killed the bill even though he's not in office. But she does the exact same thing and rejects a bill the Republicans put forward. Now, look, fair enough, we don't need it because you could just enforce the laws that we already have. But when they come up with a solution, she says no. And I can almost guarantee we're not hearing as much about this. It's not the Democrats' fault. But when it's the opposite, I mean, this is just through the roof. So she vetoed that bill, allowing people to rush the border in Arizona. They took down the shipping containers at the border because that was unlawful. They cut the barbed wire at the border in Texas, I believe, because that was cruel and unusual. Meanwhile, the illegals are running roughshod over Americans, but that's not cruel and unusual. We should just let them do that because maybe, just maybe, hopefully, I don't know, they're eventually going to vote Democrat. I don't really know what the end goal is, or congressional seats or whatever it is. So these people come into Arizona illegally because Cartel Katie is letting it happen, and then saying that, yeah, well, you could squat if you want, basically, right? In not so many words, but this is an older article. Well, I mean, not that old, whatever, March 2024. In her first veto of the year, Governor Cartel Katie killed a Republican-backed bill that would have allowed the state to police illegal border crossings. But she didn't want to do that. Why would she not want to do that? Because she is obviously part of this problem. And when that happens, you can also let them squat in your house. And it is going to be, now, of course, they're not just going to let them do it, but it makes it incredibly difficult for anybody with a tiny bit of rationality or common sense to push back on this stuff. And then you have this woman, of course, where we started, that is, Donald Trump, and there's gonna be indictments. So, I mean, they're literally telling you that if you are not on board with all of our corruption, then we are gonna charge you with a crime. But we're gonna let the squatters and the illegals commit crimes all over the place.